Hey, Nick Digilio here. How's it going? Hey, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Why don't you? So, I've been posting a bunch of videos with just some thoughts and some stories and some movie reviews, lots of movie reviews and things like that. Also, just wanted to let you know that I am, in the new year, going to be starting a podcast. A couple of them, actually. So hopefully you will subscribe to those when that sometime in the new year, January, February, somewhere around that time, you can start looking for a regular podcast that I've been working on with some people. So that's probably going to happen just a couple of months or so. In the meantime, here are some videos for you. So, I'm going to review some new movies. There has been kind of a lull, but in the next couple of weeks after that, it's going to pick up big time. I am seeing Steven Spielberg's version of West Side Story, and I'll be seeing that in a couple of days. I'm going to do a post on my thoughts on Spielberg and his movies. I'm going to rank all the Spielberg movies and talk about Steven Spielberg, whose new movie West Side Story is going to be, I guess, really big. Looking forward to it. Also, you've got Guillermo del Toro's new movie Nightmare Alley. There is the movie about Lucy and Desi called Being the Ricardos from Aaron Sorkin. That's coming out. The Matrix, the new Matrix movie, which looks fucking great, is coming out. So there's a bunch more movies. And the official release of Licorice Pizza, Paul Thomas Anderson's latest film, that comes out on Christmas officially. I reviewed that one. I saw it almost a month ago. I saw it about a month ago, and that's available here on the YouTube channel. But I thought I'd go back and talk about a movie that I watched very, very late last night, early this morning. I just wanted to mention, if you've not seen this movie, it's 42 years old, so it's not a new movie. It's The China Syndrome. I just felt it necessary to talk a little bit about the movie. I was just flipping around cable, and it had just started. And it's one of those movies that, for me, is what you call a remote dropper. A remote dropper meaning, you're sitting on the couch or something or in bed and you're flipping around on the channels and you come across a movie that no matter where it is, how far into it, if it's just beginning or if it's almost over, if it's in the middle, whatever, you drop the remote. It's so good. It is a movie that you can watch repeatedly, anytime, anywhere, any place. That's a remote dropper. For me, it's stuff like My Cousin Vinny is a remote dropper. Midnight Run is a remote dropper. There's a lot of them for me, and one of them is The China Syndrome, which is not, the other two are sort of, are funny and kind of lighthearted, and a lot of remote droppers are the kind of movies that are kind of fun. A China Syndrome's not a fun movie. It's not, hey, this is hilarious, it was almost the end of the world. But it's a great film, and I just wanted to mention, if you've not seen it, it came out in 1979, early 1979, March of 1979, and it stars Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, and Michael Douglas, and it was directed by the late, great James Bridges, who was a really great American craftsman. He did a lot of really terrific movies, including The Paper Chase and Urban Cowboy, Mike's Murder. He did Perfect with Jamie Lee Curtis and John Travolta. A lot of people hate that movie. I don't. I actually think it's good. And Bright Lights, Big City with Michael J. Fox, which I don't think is a good movie. But by far the best movie he ever directed was The China Syndrome. He passed away at the age of 57 from intestinal cancer. He was one of the great outed filmmakers, a really a terrific gay artist who in June I did a whole bunch of stuff on Facebook because of Pride Month, talking about my favorite works by gay directors, and I listed The China Syndrome as my favorite from this director. In case you're not familiar with it, The China Syndrome is a movie about broadcasting, about television, about covering news stories, journalism, and about the possibility of a nuclear meltdown at a nuclear power plant. In it, Jack Lemmon plays a guy named Jack Goodell. He is a senior manager, supervisor at a nuclear power plant in California, and Jane Fonda plays a newswoman who does very fluff pieces on TV, like if a dolphin has a birthday, at an aquarium, she covers it. If you can get wacky telegrams, she covers it. It's that light, stupid kind of shit that people cover on news shows where they send people out to do wacky locations. But in her heart, she really wants to do hard news. She wants to be a hard news reporter that's doing real news, not these fluff pieces. Unfortunately, she's really attractive. That's what they like about her at the station. They make no bones about it. They talk about how she should keep her hair and do her makeup. And this was Jane Fonda in the late 70s. And yes, Jane Fonda in the late 70s, hot. So she's kind of frustrated with the kind of work that she's doing, and she wants to do real work. Michael Douglas plays a television cameraman who's a freelance guy, doesn't work for the station that she works for. And they are sent out to cover a quick piece at a nuclear power plant. Just a quick piece. She's going to stand in front of the power plant and talk about, hey, it's been here for a long time. She's going to talk to the PR guy, played by the great James Hampton, and that would be Caretaker from The Longest Yard. Goddamn Caretaker. He plays the PR guy of the nuclear power plant, and they're doing like this fluff piece. And while they're there, something happens in the control room. They're up in the soundproof area, and they can look out into the control room where all of the valves and all of the buttons and all of the controls for the power plant, the nuclear power plant, are there. Jack Lemmon and his crew are in there, including Wilford Brimley, the great Wilford Brimley, and something happens. The place starts to shake. An accident happens. And then what happens after that, and they capture it all on film, unbeknownst to everybody else. So Michael Douglas has this film of this nuclear sort of breakdown that happens, and the panic that sets in on the crew, and especially Jack Lemmon, and what to do with this footage. They have to hide it because the nuclear power plant doesn't want it to be shown because they're up for, approving another license for another power plant in the state. So then this film becomes very important, and it could open up a whole can of worms and in fact, a huge accident happened at that power plant at that time that Jane Fonda and Michael Douglas and everybody else witnessed. And it almost opened up the core of the nuclear power plant, thus the China syndrome, meaning that if they had opened up the core and it had been exposed, it could have burrowed a hole through the earth all the way down to China, thus the China syndrome. Then the conspiracy starts in. Who is after the film? Who is after these X-rays that Jack Lemmon discovers? And Jack Lemmon, character Jack Goodell, decides to investigate and finds out, this power plant should be closed down. But nobody wants to close it down. People start mysteriously having accidents. And meanwhile, Jane Fonda is struggling with her work to cover real news stories. Michael Douglas has this film that he's stolen, and it all culminates into a final moment scene where Jack Lemmon, armed with a gun, takes over the nuclear power plant power station and says that he wants to be interviewed live on TV to expose all of the bad things that are happening and to make sure that everybody knows that this power plant is dangerous and it should be shut down. And it all culminates into a very thrilling ending. Now, I'm sure you've seen this movie. But I just want to mention, again, this movie's 42 years old, and it is as powerful now as it was when it came out in March of 1979. I remember when it came out in March of 1979. I think a lot of people do. I was 13 going on 14 when it came out. I was in 8th grade at Alexander Hamilton Public School, right by Wrigley Field. And I remember seeing it and being completely freaked out by it. This was a 77, 78, 79. Those were seminal years for me personally in the world of going to movies. I started to realize, after I saw Halloween in 1978, that's when I realized what a director does, and I really dove into the world of movies. And China Syndrome was a big one for me. I remember as a kid thinking, wow, this is a really good movie. And I began exploring other movies and older movies. And for me, the 70s was the best decade ever for film, ever. It spilled over into the early 80s. But if you want to go back and you want to watch some of the best fucking movies ever made, ever, consistently, the decade of the 70s is easily the best decade for film ever. And this is one of them. So I remember when it came out for several reasons. One, it was a terrific movie. I had a massive crush on Jane Fonda. Again, 70s Jane Fonda. Hubba. Was always a fan of Jack Lemmon, always, since The Great Race, when I was a little kid. Great Race. Michael Douglas, I always liked him, was familiar with him from Streets of San Francisco and some of the other movies, and I just thought he was really cool in this movie. Long, unkempt hair, beard, liked him. And the movie really sort of freaked me out. There was some stuff going on. Nuclear power plants were in the news at that time in the 70s. The movie came out in March of 1979, and literally 12 days after the movie's release, 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania happened, which was a nuclear accident that could have been catastrophic. The same sort of similar thing that happens in the China Syndrome happened in real life 12 days after the movie was released. So to say that the timing of this movie was incredible is an understatement. And then the movie went on to make, it was already a pretty successful movie, solid, but once the 3 Mile Island thing happened, I'm sure the producers at Columbia and the people at Columbia were like, "This is fucking awesome." Not that people almost died, that Pennsylvania almost went up, and that there was poison in the air, and it was horrible. But I'm sure because suits are assholes. People, your bosses are assholes. I've had the last guy I had, biggest asshole I've ever worked for. But anyway, suits don't know what they're talking about. They're morons, but they do like money, and they do like things that are successful, especially if they don't have to do shit to make it successful. That's the key. If you're an asshole suit, you don't do anything. You sit in an office all day, and you hope that something happens so that you can make money, or you manipulate things so that they can make money. So that's what they were doing at Columbia. They were like, "Holy shit, this is fantastic. I'm a genius. A nuclear power plant almost exploded. Now we're going to make money." But the movie exploded with popularity, no pun intended, and it became cover of Time, Newsweek, and the movie started to make millions and millions, and it generated a lot of talk, pro and con, about nuclear power. So just in terms of just like a news level, the movie made big news after 3 Mile. It's so prescient, by the way, that in the movie when they describe what could have happened in this power plant that they captured on tape, talking to Michael Douglas and to Jane Fonda, one of the experts says, after the China Syndrome, he said that it could render a state the size of Pennsylvania completely gone. And they used the state of Pennsylvania in the movie, which of course was shot, year and a half before the incident. But the state of Pennsylvania is mentioned in the movie. So all of this stuff just sort of happened, and the movie became a phenomenon. And it's also a great movie. It's a great conspiracy thriller. It really works on that level. If you like conspiracy thrillers, it's that. It also, leaves it up to you as to whether nuclear power plants are something that people should be concerned about, especially back in the late 70s. And it was also a great showcase for the performers. You got a great supporting cast. I mentioned James Hampton, caretaker from The Longest Yard. Peter Donat is in this movie, a terrific character. Lots of terrific character actors are in it. Daniel Valdez, who plays the sound guy that works with Michael Douglas, is really charming and really good in this film. The great James Karen, who plays Jane Fonda's boss at the immediate boss at the TV station, is great. I mentioned him in another video earlier. Fantastic actor, James Karen. And Wilford Brimley, who before he became Wilford Brimley, Cocoon Wilford Brimley, and a Wilford Brimley, which is how he was billed for The Thing, sans mustache. He's got the mustache in this movie, but he plays like the assistant to Jack Lemmon's character at the nuclear power plant, and it's a great performance. The final scene that he has is tremendous. It's a great performance. So here's a movie filled with great character actors and performances. Michael Douglas is fantastic in this movie. One of my very favorite Michael Douglas performances as this rebellious, pissed off cameraman who's clearly good at his job and does not want to be screwed, wants to get this story out, wants the truth to be out, will not let the suits and the important people and the conspiracies to stop this from being out. Jane Fonda is magnificent in this movie. She so fits the bill for this part, being the really hot news reporter, but who really, really wants to do serious work and wants to be a serious journalist. And this big, serious story falls into her lap. And, the final scenes in the film really, push her character to the limit to see if she really is cut out to do this kind of journalism. And you root for her. You really, really root for her. In the last scene of this movie, the final scene of the movie, you are so rooting for Jane Fonda's character to do, the best she can. Hampered, again, this movie takes place in the 70s, where it's like, hey, wear a hot dress and put on some more makeup, look like a hot chick, and we'll have you jump around with kangaroos on TV. But it was really about her looks as opposed to, what she was doing. And that still exists, in broadcasting today. Attractive women are usually relegated to sit on the side, and it was worse in the 70s, but it still exists today. It's not like it's gone. But then there's Jack Lemmon. I think his character, Jack Goodell, his performance in China Syndrome is one of Jack Lemmon's best performances of all time. And we're talking about Jack Lemmon. We're talking about a fucking great actor who has given hundreds of great performances, who you can pretty much count on being great when you put him in a movie. For some reason, his performance in this movie really stands out. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Jack Lemmon performance of all time. He's dealing with on so many different levels. He wants to have, he wants to be faithful to the company. He wants to have company pride. He believes in nuclear power, and yet he doesn't want anything dangerous to happen to the public. He hates the fact that there's a conspiracy and stuff is being hidden by the company, and that it all becomes about these mysterious jackass in suits who may or may not hold a lot of power and may or may not, hurt people or maybe kill people. And the way that Lemmon plays it is a man who wants to do his job, but is concerned and is desperate to make sure that the truth happens. And it's a great performance. The final scenes in the movie are stunning, and it ultimately ends up being very heartbreaking. His character ends up being very heartbreaking. There is no music score in this movie. James Bridges has a handle on the intensity and the suspense in this movie. There's no music score except for a song at the beginning during the credits, the Stephen Bishop song called Somewhere in Between. Stephen Bishop, by the way, late 70s, everywhere, man. He's on every soundtrack. He's also the guy in Kentucky Fried Movie during the trailer for Catholic Girls, the Catholic Girls High School Catholic Girls trailer is the one that goes. The woman goes, "Show me your nuts," and he goes, "Okay, cock-a-doodle-doo." And he does the whole thing. That's Stephen Bishop. He's also the guy playing the guitar in Animal House. When Bluto grabs the guitar, Belushi smashes it against the wall. That's Stephen Bishop. Anyway, he had a song, was nominated for Best Song that year. The film was up for a few nominations, including Jane Fonda and Jack Lemmon. I think Jack Lemmon should have won. It was a strong year, though, because that year, 1979, Dustin Hoffman won for Kramer versus Kramer. Not one of my favorite movies. So he won for that, and everybody knew he was going to win. But also up against him was Al Pacino for Justice for All, Roy Scheider for All That Jazz, and Peter Sellers for Being There. They were all nominated against Jack Lemmon. That's a pretty solid list right there, especially Roy Scheider for All That Jazz. But I think Lemmon maybe should have won that movie or that award. A couple of years later, a movie called Blowout would come out, and that was Brian De Palma's fantastic take on conspiracy theory movies, and so it's a great film. The China Syndrome, and if you love conspiracy theory movies, this is a great one. I mean, the ultimate one came out 2 years later with Blowout, but the China Syndrome, 42 years later, still holds up. It is still scary. It's still intense. It's still very entertaining. And again, great performances and really suspenseful. Really, James Bridges really ratcheted the suspense in this movie. Holds your attention. It's a great film. So if you have not seen it, I know it's 42 years old. It was on cable late at night. Check your cable listings. I know you can stream it. If you've never seen The China Syndrome, or it's been a really long time since you've seen it, it holds up. Sometimes I'll watch a movie that's old and I'll go, God damn, this movie is good. Haven't talked about it. I'm sure that in the last like 10 years of me being on the radio regularly, I don't think I ever mentioned The China Syndrome in any sort of capacity. So I wanted to mention it because I was watching. I'm like, God damn, this is a great movie. It's a classic. So just a little reminder: The China Syndrome is a great film. So watch it. And remember the whole news situation with the actual real 3 Mile Island nuclear accident happening when it came out. It was a pretty amazing time for that movie to be released and what was happening at the time. I remember it. I was, pushing 14 and vividly remember the circumstances around the release of that movie and everything. And it still lives. It still lives on. If you're a fan of Jane Fonda, Michael Douglas, especially Jack Lemmon, doesn't get better than this. Beautifully written, professionally directed, a great, great thriller, The China Syndrome. So, just a little reminder, some movies are great even if they're 42 years old. So, anyway, all right, more videos to follow. Watch The China Syndrome if you get a chance. All right, we'll see you soon.